All right, there we are. Addie sent me a link to a podcast, the Sam Harris podcast, Triggered. Um, which I at first I was like, wait, that's really his podcast name? Oh, okay, that's kind of clever. Um, and he was interviewing Scott Adams about Donald Trump's presidency so far, and Addie had said something about being able to only get through minute 45. And that is the very interesting part. For one, I recommend there's some line that's pure gold. But I mean, minutes 44 through 49, Sam Harris just loses it. He just dumps all his marbles out on the table, and that's it. I listened. I was about an hour and 9 minutes through, and I had gotten some notes, and it was like, oh, no, no, no. Okay, now I'm getting this. No, this is key stuff that somebody like him maybe knows in like a philosophical sense, but he hasn't come to a point where he gets a lot of people who became who or a lot of people who existed in some way online in comment sections, making people mad or giving people the sads or something. Not even really shit posting, but or people who just after Ron Paul, they had stayed sort of their ear to the ground about that kind of talk, reducing the sheer immensity of the state, mostly based on anti-war sentiment. People like Sam Harris don't understand that movements like the alt-right came out of dissatisfaction with the ability to convince people of the libertarian point of view, and that the libertarians seem to be slightly and aimless. They didn't really have like a common social bonding and stuff, even though, as people like Spencer picked up on, well, they did have something in common. This inordinately smart young male and white. And one of the main reasons why is because those are groups that it would fit most in the libertarian worldview. They are the people who are the taxable income base of the present and the future. High intelligence white males go into jobs that become where almost all of the taxes on individuals and households come from. People are poor and sole proprietors as well. But people are poor, like broke motherfuckers like me. Well, I mean, any jump upward, I start paying significantly more taxes. And so it's one of these things where it was really all the MGTOW people kind of made me understand, like, wait a second, as long as I can kind of enjoy my life with relatively little overhead, I'm actually technically winning right now because of the way the economy is changing. And so I was like, yes, I need to stay adaptable to the changing of the fundamental parts of the economy, such as automation. People like Sam Harris don't know, and very few people outside of like alt right libertarians, shit posters. People were very savvy. I realize, I guess, rather savvy with the online world. They don't really know where any of this stuff came from. All of a sudden, Donald Trump had this massive amount of support online, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're these people who are terrible," and they've shit posted my Twitter feed. They've messed with me on Tumblr. They messed with my daughter on Tumblr. My daughter, she says something about other kin. She's just creative, and these people are always spoiling her good time. Um, so what started to hit me was I was like, wait a second. The way once it's the Scott Adams and Sam Harris started discussing two different movies, they are watching two different movies, and that Sam Harris would kind of object to this. What started to hit me is I was like, no, 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 there we go, boom, new left. You don't like the idea that you're crazy. Another thing that became a very interesting part of their discussion, and this would really hit me, analogy. That they had to agree to sort of disagree on the nature of analogy, and it kept coming back up. But one of the things I found was very interesting was that Sam felt that this was a far more valid way of explaining a lot of things. There's a wide range of things that could be explained, but one of the things that was interesting was at a certain critical stage of the argument, he was talking about how Trump University was fundamentally analogous of obviously the ethical set, the ethics of Donald Trump, and blah blah blah. And so that made me see it again. Like, okay, no, I'm getting this. Okay. One of the things that I have found interesting about analogy is something that if you ever look up Freemasonic writing and modern mysticism and occultism, it comes up about analogy. I think it's something to do with Jungian psychology, I believe. But that's a big, 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 big deal, is the idea of these multiple layers of analogy. This definitely is something that comes heavily out of the Kabbalistic tradition and of the 1400s and on. And that the idea that you could apply wild analogies to any story. This idea you can interpret things yourself individually and apply wild analogies. This is some field now that is considered that all these people are trying to get happening in English as a standard. Like, you professors of English will be saying, that this is, you can interpret it as the author wished, but why do that? Because you can interpret it as you want. Yeah. And they whip out their tambourine and everybody, talks about their genitals. The only person I ever heard defend that approach, she was just a nutter who could, a total nutter, who was obviously a waste of public education's money. So analogy becomes important basically in mysticism, in fundamentally propaganda, and some sections of philosophy. There's some aspects of philosophy that once you're dealing with concepts that you do have to use an analogy a lot of times. Or that you have to use an analogy because what you're talking about is so fictional at the present time. Such as if we were to talk about a planetary Soviet, what could you make this analogous? You would have to make this analogous to something else, because nothing like that has ever been. And, I found it interesting that this was a big deal for him. Obviously, analogy was very important to him. Philosophy, rhetoric, propaganda, mysticism, all rhetorical, all rhetoricians' specialties. While Scott Adams was pointing out, now and then, sort of things about, have you ever done this kind of deal before, or this kind of work before? Because there's this complication involved. So they're in two different theaters watching two totally different movies. People who are into Trump being of this libertarian end of war is simply fucking expensive, as well as an inefficient way of getting whatever policy outcomes you want. So in that theater are a bunch of people who have long since doubted the Western world's policy outcome desires. They have no illusions about that Barack Obama was just a nice guy who was doing things for nice reasons. They have no that's a silly thing, that's a childish way of thinking, that there are politicians that it serves them to have the ethics of somebody who is just a normal person with normal family life. Okay, because the nuclear family has to be ethical. In the nuclear family, you have to be ethical and moral. Once you're governing the state, this is statecraft. As Baron Harkonnen would say, as he's flying through the air, this is Canley Piter. We are always at light level war with neighboring states. It will be like this. People who are these philosophers and these rhetoricians have fanciful dreams about, oh no, don't you understand? Those people, they are just waiting to come running across the fields and embrace us, and we will embrace them. We'll all enjoy a Coke. And people who say stuff like this and behave in this way, they can only live in America. Like, nobody anywhere anymore has this fantasy in their mind. Every day, Germans are learning how silly, how utterly childish their thinking had been. Every day, people like Estonians and Latvians are learning, like, oh no, we were fools for believing for doubting that Charles Martel did something important. And it's very odd that Sam Harris will, in some ways, understand the grim view, the dark view, as Thomas Sowell, I think, put it. The dark view, I think. So this is the view that comes out of the school of the people the libertarians, who they became dissuaded, and then they start reading Nick Land's Dark Enlightenment essays, and they start realizing, why is it there's this thing, these liberals, these post-1800s liberals that have taken over everything and have taken over all thought. And so there were a number of places that this came up, that in the theater of Trump supporters, these are people who figure a large portion of political leaders are phonies. They're even phonier if they were activists, if what they did was law, activism, the rhetorical arts. If these were people who had actually at some point made money doing some kind of deals, providing services, or actually, God forbid, they actually made a product of some sort, that they caused a physical object to be made and people purchased it. Oh my gosh, can you imagine if somebody that knowledgeable of anything practical could possibly ever make decisions over the practical application of policy? This is the guy who's made a comic about how no one listens to the engineers. No one ever, ever, ever wants to listen to the people who know how everything works. Why would you ever think the people who make everything work actually know shit? No, there are rhetoricians. There are handsome men who pose and they're like, I, in the tradition of manly P. Hall, say florid things that make you feel smarter for hearing them. And just these fuckers. Sometimes you're just sitting there like, there's times where Sam Harris does the thing about religion where he analyzes Islam from this ethical point of view that it's like, well, yes, I mean, it just simply you have to wildly interpret what this says to understand this as anything else other than almost vomit, gut wrenching, disgusting description of what Muhammad was involved in and his followers. Oh my God, like what the fuck? And so I get it, like where there's times where it's like, oh yeah, I get that that's a fair analysis from philosophy. And individuals at the nuclear family level, at the individual level, they're the ones deciding on that. They're the only ones who can weigh certain risks versus rewards about moral or ethical choices. There's this Looney Tunes idea that there's all this ethics and morality in business. This kooky pants idea that people get, especially who are Democratic voters and who are these like liberals. I've noticed there's a lot of these men like this, that they're also often hung up on the soft feminism. And they're again, very often they have a certain type of style and way about them that you just don't get the feeling that like they've done work and like they haven't used a forklift that much. They don't have to. They know whatever their pay has not been contingent on this many pounds came in, this many tons came in, this many tons must leave, or we don't, or we don't get paid. Then no, we're doing this for free. Otherwise, everything over this tonnage is all cream. That they're those kind of people. These people who you can imagine like have never just they're not guys who've dug in and done awful work because they just had to. That at some point they got to do super awesome work, and that's great. And the ladies like a guy who does not have that banged up, hardened shell, on them. As they like a provider who will grin and provide, and so there's these guys like Sam Harris who they have to believe they have to be in this other theater. It's family friendly. It's the family friendly story, and the family friendly story is Barack Obama's administration, where he was just helping people out. He's helping all the poor, and he's helping all the blacks, and he's helping all Latinos, because all these people, their lives are so hard. Their lives are unbelievably hard. You can't even believe it, And here's an analogy, and it's their movie is all just analogies. It's not actually what's really happening. Sam Harris showed his mind broke down into wild-eyed Hitler analogies by the 44 to 49 mark. Was it by the 51-minute mark? What was it? Oh, this was actually kind of interesting when he was talking about this is all he needs to know about Trump's ethics and blah blah. And it was interesting because I'm like, oh, okay, you've never known like wealthy, dangerous people, like people who are like multi-generational, like don't fuck with us money. You're fucking with the wrong person money. Like where these are the people who the guy who looks like Kaiser Soze's lawyer, I represent Kaiser Soze, and that guy shows up and he offers you don't fuck with us payola. Or he offers you the various legal papers, and you can just ignore all of this if you don't fuck with us, so there's people out there that they're don't fuck with me money level, and people like Sam Harris have never, they don't, because they won't deal with statecraft honestly. That statecraft is ugly because there are countries that are full of dumb people that will fucking do dumb things, and the local government has to control their dumbness. And a lot of people don't get, like, no, really, that really is true, and that they will just annihilate some neighboring people that you just can't even understand why they would do that. Nobody outside of their context would understand why are you all fighting again. We need to build a rail line through here. Why are you fucking this up? Sometimes you need somebody around who is Mr. Don't fuck with me money. And he could go to all the people who make trouble and he could say, I don't think you understand. You will not fuck this up. Here's your piece. Here's a little taste. The plata is giving back to all of you. This train line's going to come through here, and you all are going to fucking become modernized people, or you will learn why we run this area. You will learn why we're the local nobles of this area. We will remind you how this works, and that for the most part, societies all over the world are pretty much that's how a lot of things. That's why there's a road through it now. Sam can't handle that. It's unethical. It's not right. It's this. It's that. No, that's in the other theater. That's in our theater. The Trump followers understand that's the way the world is. There's actually this book that all these people called the Jews kept. They call it, like we call it the book in the Western world. They call it the directions, and it tells you all these stories that are just terrible. But apparently, that's how life works. And so people like him would rather it be an analogy to something much nicer, much sweeter. And it's like, oh, no, there's plenty of analogy in there. But also, sometimes what you're supposed to do is just decimate the enemy, take over their fucking town, because your kids are going to eat. And that's how that when you have power, that's it. Now you can afford to believe in Barack Obama's like saintliness. I love that one. That was obvious. Like that started to really wind through that. I'm like, wait a second. What? I keep seeing this tangle of wisteria. What are you tangled around? Oh, that's Barack Obama's dick. Oh, Sam Harris, you ride his fucking cock. He was a loser. In a 3-month period, he lost 5 military fronts. It was amazing. I mean, just the guy was a loser. And the beautiful part is that it all started to come apart so well that I swear this is the thing that none of these people are ever going to get. Trump saw it. Trump saw cheap real estate. He saw he put it on the line, but he's like, no, really. The price of this is about to go through the fucking floor. All the bidders are about to pull out. Watch. And he was right. And then on top of it, he had all these Kekistanis start like going to his opponents and saying, you don't want to fuck with us.